Hey, welcome to episode 67 of the PoddyC. This week, Oracle has been nerfed. Oracle Disc Priest has been taken down a peg, along with a lot of buffs, actually, to some of the other specs that were looking a little worse. They also nerfed the raid, and they said they nerfed the raid basically as like, hey, we're nerfing Oracle Disc, and we don't want, and actually Disc in general, and we don't want the raid to get harder, which I think was smart. When I initially saw the raid nerfs, I was a little worried. I was like, oh, Gallywix is getting nerfed. That seemed like a boss that could go the entire tier or like 3 months or something without taking a nerf. But then once I read the rationale, I was like, okay, yeah, that is probably fair. It's always a really bad experience to have a boss be harder the next week than it was the previous week.
Question, about the power of Oracle. When was the last time a spec got nerfed? This is probably only relevant to healers, maybe, but when was the last time a spec got nerfed and the entire raid got nerfed because of it?
I think this has happened before, right?
I feel like people make the argument every time there are nerfs to specs.
No. Oh, well, every time there's nerfs,
they nerfed the hell out of Prez, right?
Yeah, I was going to say Prez. Yeah. Just last season, Prez was like maybe all time relatively the strongest healer. It's like certainly in conversations, right? I don't think Disc is in those conversations, but Disc is a very specific healer at doing a specific thing that the raid asks from you on every single boss. And by nerfing that, it probably did need nerfs. But like when I saw that, the first thing that came in my head was like, how often does this happen? You know, how often does this happen where they nerf a singular class and they're like, okay, the entire raid needs to do less damage now?
Yeah, I do think it's pretty rare that they actually do it, because it's usually like, okay, we're nerfing this class, but you're getting stronger with a week's worth of gear and stuff, and like you're still going to be stronger overall. But yeah, it's this one. I mean, the Nerebar Palace was a good example, though. I think the Nerebar Palace one was bigger. Like, I think the Prez nerfs were not compensated for the same week that they came in, right?
Yeah.
I at least remember my guild complaining a lot about it, even though we were under indexed on preservation compared to a lot of guilds. So that's kind of good for us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What has it done to Mythic Plus, Dorki?
The Oracle nerfs?
Yeah.
So there's been a lot of speculations, but right now it's still just as strong and like it's still just as useful for the most part. However, when we're facing HPS throughput issues, I think Oracle Disc Priest has fallen off. And the reason I say that is because, hold on, I was gonna pull up.
While you pull that up, are there? I'm trying to think of the two differences. Like, Oracle just makes you feel really cozy because like just the single target healing is insane. Like the fact that you can put a massive single target heal into an absorb is super good. But you're saying like, you know, second boss of No Code Offensive famously, or just like any like boss or trash pack that's just absolutely nuking the group and you need coverage for it, you think Oracle's going to fall behind?
Like, yeah, really like any rod fights, they took a massive nerf to HPS throughput, and like that's not Oracle's strong point currently. Which, I mean, it kind of works out well, right? It basically means that class is extremely good at shielding, and that's part of its niche, but it's not good at just pumping out pure HPS. Yeah, so the MDI, aka TGP time trials, started this week. And if we look at Dark Flame Cleft here, the top runs right now are being played with Resto Druid and Resto Shaman.
All right.
And surprisingly, the first place team right now, mandatory, is playing double Druid, which means they're not playing the Resto Druid for Market Wild. They're playing it just for the HPS.
Wow. That is actually really cool.
When has that happened?
So cool. This says something good about Resto Druid and Moonkin, right? It says that both Resto Druid and Moonkin are good enough to be brought
strong enough on their own. Yep.
Without the
we talked about this last week too. We were talking about like best raid buffs.
Yeah.
That actually blows my mind. Yeah, actually, I was about to say when I heard the shaman get brought in, I'm like, bro, they listened to the last PoddyC for sure. We were
I will say, no, it is true though. Like, shaman buff is actually so insane. Like, I honestly feel like I underrated it last week. I honestly would probably say Sky Fury is the strongest raid buff currently in M+ at least, with like the current specs. It's so good. Like, it's straight up giving your DK just way more damage. And I think if Resto Shaman can make these HPS checks, it might just be the new go-to healer. Like, I don't want to say that just yet, because like I said last week, Oracle Disc Priest brings so much safety to your group, and it just feels nice to play with an Oracle Disc Priest, right? Like, it's not. I still don't feel Oracle is OP. Like, I'm probably gonna get a lot of shit for this because all the healers out there, we're all ragey booming dumb healers. But they've been saying like, oh yeah, Oracle's oppressively OP. I was in Growl's chat the other day, and they're just slinging the dumbest shit in chat. They were saying how like, oh, but they have PI and they have so much utility. And it's like, no, they don't have shit, man. Like, Priest is so useless compared to a Resto Shaman here that has a 12-second kick and Thunderstorm and Cap Totem. Like, Shaman is so insane for utility. I think, honestly, Shaman is so good if it can actually be used in these high keys.
Well, what's really surprising to me thinking about that now is the double Druid group. Like, so you're saying they don't have a Shaman buff and they're choosing to play Resto Druid?
Yeah.
That's crazy to me. Like, that makes me think that they're do they not have a DK?
They do have a DK.
Isn't that? I mean, that the only way that makes sense is if Resto Druid enables a pull that Resto Shaman cannot do. I think because that's just an objective huge group damage loss, right?
The thing about Dark Flame Cleft is right now the biggest bottleneck by far in this dungeon is the third boss, Candle King. It's a pure rot HPS fight. We haven't seen a fight like this since Kajin in Halls of Infusion. Yeah. And yeah, like the timer is extremely free in this dungeon, as you can see by how fast they've been timing it. It's just a matter of can we get past that boss. Yeah. So
that's actually really interesting.
Pure healer dungeon.
Yeah, I mean,
but
we have seen
like it's still the second day.
Four healer specs have done the 20 in time trials so far, which is that's just phenomenal, right?
That's insane.
That is very cool to see. So I think the balance for the high end definitely deserves. It's crazy because the best 3 runs don't have the Disc Priest, and then most of the rest of the top 20 is Disc all the way down, except for a brave Mistweaver healing a very brave bear, which you love to see.
Without even seeing what those groups are, that isn't surprising. Like the top 3 probably best teams, again, I have no idea who these people are the ones quickly to adapt in 1 week to a new meta, right? And the other teams are stuck with what they've been running and have been most practiced with all seasons. There's multiple things that make sense. The new group is easier, better to adapt, but also like most people just play what they're good at. And it turns out if you've run these dungeons hundreds of times by now on Disc Priest, then like you're going to perform better in that time trial with most, not the absolute top tier skill of team, but like just below that, you're going to do way better at the thing you're practiced on than like having that guy randomly play Resto Shaman unless he's also played it like very recently.
Yeah, that's always been a hallmark of like the very best teams is that they just don't, they're just ready to play whatever, right? Like they literally are. That was always the thing with Echo, right? Is you never caught Echo like playing something they were comfortable on because they were comfortable on it. They just always played what was actually best, and they played it well enough to have it be good. Yeah,
it's gonna take time too because people still haven't fully accustomed to the nerfs that happened like literally just Tuesday. And one really interesting thing about this TGP, I don't know if it was mentioned before, but they gave us avoidance, tertiary, enchants. So all these players are running around with 20% avoidance.
That's a pretty crazy
big deal. Yeah.
This has been like
talk
a
about this before.
time
I swear
debate.
we talked about this before.
We didn't. I don't think we've talked about this. Well, we've talked about how
like off stream or off podcast.
Maybe. I mean, well, we've talked about on podcast, then like informed viewers that, you know, the people on the tournament realm have 0 tertiaries and like they have BIS gear, like better gear than they have on live. But they don't have tertiaries, and it's like it kind of equals out. But in some seasons, people have felt like their live key characters were actually stronger because they had the tertiaries built up, especially when Leech was OP. I think it's been nerfed a little bit, but that's actually insane. And I was just about to ask a question that may have been answered by that information. I was going to say it's surprising that the throughput checks would be so difficult that people would drop Disc near the top because Shadow Priest isn't being played. Losing Fort when you go to the levels of keys like 19s and 20s is crazy that someone's healing throughput could be so much higher than Priest to make up for the lost HP, like effective HP. Like that effective HP at that key level, not just for one shots, just in general, is so insane for consistency. And them getting gapped and being like replaced is like very interesting to me because like Fort is so good.
Yeah.
It must be avoidance. Like avoidance makes that so much easier though.
Well, it's also like if the season is less about one shots, like if it's an HPS check, in theory, the value of some extra effective health against, and not just effective health, but like health that still needs to be healed. Because avoidance is nice; it increases your effective health, but it also increases the effectiveness of healing on you, right? Because 1 point of health now will mitigate more damage. But just increasing your actual stamina with the priest buff is less helpful against a fight like Candle King, right? Because as long as you're not dying in one shot, a little bit of a bigger sponge, like it helps. It helps the healing be easier.
I think it definitely helps.
But it's not as important as it is in a season where there have been a lot of seasons where it's like, okay, we need to increase our effective health so that we don't get one shot by these things, right? Or so we don't get two shot by two ticks of this or whatever, right?
Like every season for the past like multiple years besides this one.
Yeah. And that's not the thing with Candle King, right? Like Candle King is like, okay, I'm dying over 6 seconds or 6.5 seconds. Which of the, like, yes, dying over 6.5 is better, but if you have a healer that can do 20% more HPS, that's more better. Whereas that wasn't
20% a massive number,
right?
But
yeah,
like
10%.
Like the thing is rotting out over 6.5 seconds or whatever. Still starting with that extra. How much is Fort again? Is it 6% HP? Am I making that up?
I think
5.
I'm
like having
like
you're usually topped not too long before you die, even in rot situations. So it definitely matters for that health bar going to 0.
Yeah, and it does help, right? Like having a larger health pool as well means that there won't be overheal that otherwise might have happened on you as well. And so it is value. It's not just a case of like, oh, the only point that matters is the last. Like it is nice, but it's not as pivotal as it was in most of Dragonflight seasons, for instance, which I think is a hallmark of the dungeons being much better designed or tuned than that season. I think any season where Fort is like required to play is a bad season.
Yep. Agree.
The DPS side of things is also looking pretty good too. We got a Warlock up there. Method are playing a Warlock.
Where are you guys seeing this?
I linked it.
It's in LinkedIn production.
I
can share
events
it
on Raider.io. I think that's where I was confused.
Yeah.
There's not like an actual thing to click on it.
Yeah, the Raider here, I can share it on this as well. Okay, I won't share it. Frank loves putting these in without me clicking the share button. That makes his job really easy. He loves just putting it in from the links that we
I feel like Warlock
channel.
Isn't super surprising to see post changes. Like the Warlocks are doing big damn. They got huge buffs last week.
They rolled back the demo buffs by quite a lot.
Yeah, they were going to be the top single target in the game by a fair amount. Yeah.
But Warlock buffs were surprising. I mean, the class was already really good, so it was very surprising to see them get buffed.
That is a case, in my opinion, of squeaky wheel gets the grease. Like, Warlocks are always mad unless they're the best class in the game, and Blizzard changes things. They hear feedback, They have someone's job at Blizzard is to, like, accrue feedback, notice when people are extra mad, and then, like, give it to the right people who can make changes to those things. So I hope the lesson from this isn't be more loud about everything when you're not exactly the best spec, but that do be happening.
Yeah, you got to be careful though.
Listen about the target cap.
That's true. Yeah, we complained about that last week. Somebody in the comments was like, "Oh yeah, Max does a dungeon on Windwalker and is immediately radicalized on the target cap."
I said that in the episode. I was like, I understand that someone could have the outlook of like, "Oh, Max does dungeon one time on target cap class," and we've been talking about this for years. You're right. You are right. That is 100% true. But also, aren't we all like, we can only advocate for like your own experiences? So like, it's kind of hard to advocate for something you haven't actually experienced yourself.
The thing that Warlock's got to be careful of is there's a point where you're advocating for buffs that are going to move you to being the best PI target, and you don't ever want to be the best PI target. That is how you get nerfed. So
has that happened in a while? Where like it's the I think it was Shadowlands was when it started, and then all the way through Dragonflight, where it was Demo Warlocks and Unholy DKs a lot. They like got PI, and then like they got nerfed, lost PI, and got nerfed. So like they were like great, amazing to bad because of that swing. Has that happened to a class in a while? Has like the best DPS in the game been defined by PI, if that makes sense, and then been nerfed because of it? I don't think so.
I don't think in War Within. I think if we see something like Dev nerfs or
I was gonna say Dev feels like that right now.
Yeah, it like Dev also just feels different when you have PI. Like if you're playing that spec without PI, you feel a lot worse in your
Dev is insane right
Dragon
now.
Rage. Yeah,
When
that spec is crazy that spec caught a buff.
I can't remember a time where that's been the case, where like the race ends. Usually the game is defined by like there's this class that's crazy in the race, and then like everyone's like, okay, like let's see how long it takes until this gets nerfed, and then it just kind of turns into something else. But a post race buff that strong, or maybe the buff wasn't that strong, but just wherever they ended was so powerful, and it's staying that way. That's pretty unique, I think.
Yeah, Dev was like sleeper great already, and it had the problem of our new tier set is kind of underwhelming and boring. And Blizzard looked at it and they were like, okay, we want to fix that. We want to make sure that people are correct to equip the new set when they get it, which is a good goal, right? But in so doing, they overall buffed the spec, and now it's Turbo Bis for Raid, I think. And
I have a tangent off of that.
Go for it. That's what the show's all about.
Oh yeah, going into this patch, or going into basically every patch for many years now, you've expected, like, if there's a trinket really good going into the patch, you just know it's going to get nerfed, right? It's also why they do the bigger eye level jump in between seasons now. So it's a lot easier for older gear to be not as good as the new gear. And anytime there's a tier set where you're using an old tier set instead of a new one, it seems like for the past few years, they have like really quickly made that not be the case. And sometimes frustratingly by nerfing the old one and not buffing the new one. But like, they've at least aimed to do that. This tier, there was multiple trinkets from last patch that were still good, or especially early in the season. You had the new Onyx Amulet, which I'm not complaining about that. I think the way that the circlet worked out is actually kind of fine. But like the tier set with Dev was so obvious. It was like the public information for this was, you are not old Dev. You are not equipping the new tier set basically ever, or at least until you're like full Mythic, which is crazy. And they didn't change it. So I guess my question that I would ask you is, do you think that Blizzard intentionally this season, for the first time in a long time, decided that trinkets should be good in a new season and that old tier sets can be better than new tier sets? Or do you think that they were, because both of those things happened at once, they were like extremely far behind for the first time in a while?
My money is on that it was just a change they didn't have the time to make before the tier came out. But I'm not sure, because it seems weird to have that be the goal and then to change it 3 or 4 weeks in, right? Because like, I don't know, what's the point then if you're going to do that? Maybe they reversed course, but I don't
reversed course.
So.
But okay, so that's what I think too. So then my next question would be why? Like, why in this season are they behind enough to where they're even receiving feedback for these things, and this specific thing that they haven't gotten wrong in years, even when they've been behind on other things, was behind? Was it because of because other things don't seem behind? The raid, the raid at tuning was whatever, but the bosses worked. The Mythic Plus, it's one of the better Mythic Plus seasons in a long time. Like, they're cooking in other areas to where you wouldn't argue that they're behind. Maybe it's a result of that. Maybe they spent more time on Mythic Plus, so there's less time. I don't know whose jobs it is to do those. I don't know. I just find that interesting. Why now?
Yeah, that's a pretty good point. I don't know, because I'm with Dratnos. It feels like maybe it's just because they over designed on the season 1 ones, that the season 2 trinkets and tier sets seemed weaker than normal.
Okay. I can see that.
That's kind of like how I
there
see
are
it.
certainly less good trinkets this season than last season.
Oh yeah, well, they're not really bad. They're just normal. But last season trinkets and tier sets were kind of insane, at least for some of the classes.
Yeah, this year they really tried. It seemed pretty hard to like move all the good gear off of the first few bosses in the raid. Like, if you tell me you got a trinket that dropped from Vexy or Cauldron of Carnage, I will tell you you've used that item for crests.
I don't even know what they do. What do those trinkets even do?
Yeah, like Florendo's Pilot Light, or Big Red Button, or Vexy's Pit Whistle, or the other Vexy trinket. Actually, Outlaw Rogue uses that one, but
they're all really thematic and cool. But like, you just know you can hear Vexy's Pit Whistle, and you know for an absolute fact that no one is ever using that trinket.
Yeah. Now that strikes me as an intentional design choice. The Dev Evoker thing strikes me as this was probably a mistake that wasn't a big deal mistake. Like, they probably looked at it and they were like, yeah, this is probably going to need to get changed. This is one of like 10 tier sets that might need to get changed in a couple weeks' time. That's a good problem for future us to deal with. We've got a lot of stuff we need to deal with right now. It's not going to break the game. It's whatever. So that would be my money on how it happened. But how the new dev set caught a buff. I guess it's because you want to fix that. You think dev is strong, but you don't necessarily know if it's strong enough to nerf it. It's not a spec that has a lot of representation. it's not a spec that necessarily you want to nerf. I don't know. I'm surprised that the tier set buff didn't come with like a little 3% aura nerf or something like that. But it's whenever you add something like that, if you're wrong, people are going to feel really bad. So,
speaking of representation, I'm going to post a picture in the thing just because I looked whenever you mentioned like dev being really strong. I just like open Warcraft log statistics and just like Mythic logs over the last 2 weeks looking at representation. I always find this really interesting just to see what people are playing and reminding you what classes like if you ever see a bunch of feedback about a certain spec, you're like, oh, that's because like just way more people play that spec and everything else. Like look at like you mentioned not a lot of people play dev. I see 25k. I'm like, okay, that's like pretty decent.
BM this Hunter, is like several weeks post buff as well, right? It's been ramping.
Yeah. This is just simply the last 2 weeks of Mythic.
But this is Mythic. Mythic.
Bro, look at 500 AUG parses total. That's insane. I mean, actually, I'm surprised there's even really any, because there's been very little time for that class to exist for that to be someone's main. They only play that, right? Usually, it's like former dev players. But like BM Hunter 50k, Ret Paladin actually 50k, like one singular spec of melee. That's crazy. That's insane.
Yeah, a lot of these are going to be like first few bosses as well, right? Like it's not like if you shifted this to say One Arm Bandit or something, Sprocket Monger.
Ooh, that's interesting. Let's look at One Arm Bandit.
You would see a huge fall off in the in stuff like Rat, I believe.
Oh, 100%. I mean, but that's not even like a question.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, Ret Paladin's always been the most popular spec across the, like, whenever we look at M plus all levels representation, it's also always Ret.
Yeah, it's always Ret. Ret is by far the most popular spec in the game.
Yeah.
That's really interesting to me. Because it's well, I mean, obviously we think about things in their power level, and Ret is not a like historically always very strong PvE class. It's just got the most like epic WoW flavor that people want, right?
Yeah.
It's also simple and effective. That's by far the most important thing for a lot of players. Like if you hit your buttons, they should do what they should do.
BM Hunter, similarly.
BM Hunter is dude, I was shocked. So I activated Beastmaster on my Hunter for the first time this season because I was like in a Mythic 2 of 8 and I was doing bomb kicks on Cauldron of Carnage. And I was like, oh yeah, I should be BM for this because I've been playing MM because I wanted to play MM this season on that guy. But I was like, okay, BM would be a lot better. And the middle of my screen weak aura pack that I have shrunk by like 4 sizes. It was down to, it was like 2 buttons are there. Yeah. It's completely out of place with every other weak aura pack on every other spec. It's literally like a 3-button spec.
It went back to like how it used to, like for a while people were like, oh, you need like a raid leader to play something. You need a new player to play something. You throw them on BM. And then for a few years, BM had like, had some stuff going on. It had some like upkeep, some stacks, some like, they tried to like give it a little flavor, and then just recently they were just like, you know what, maybe it is actually okay to have a spec just press 2 buttons.
And I think it's good. Like you're meeting people where they're at, right? Where like if you want to play ranged in World of Warcraft and you want to not have a complicated rotation, BM, there is a spec for you, and it's the spec that everybody tells you, right? Is the spec if you go on Reddit and you're like, hey, that's what I want to play. What should I play? People will tell you BM, and they'll be right. And Blizzard have, I think, done a good job in making that be right.
What's the most recent DPS spec that was added to the game as well, right, Og? Like that, I feel that was also, now I don't think that actually ended up being that way, because like it has like a really, really, really high skill ceiling in certain content, but at a basic level, it was clearly designed to be very easy for exactly that audience of players as well.
Yeah, dev as well, you can feel like the core of the spec is extremely comprehensible and simple, right?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. And then I was like, okay, maybe that's also true of Prez, but Prez is pretty involved. But I was actually going to ask the question of, can you actually have a healer spec that's just really easy? Because it's like
Holy
healing
Priest is a lot easier.
Yeah.
This Priest was that actually last season. Like this Priest was like just spam smite. You only had like 1 real cooldown you had to worry about.
But did you still have to set up ramps though?
Not in keys, really.
Oh, yeah, you mean
you
in
did,
dungeons?
but it was kind of automatic. Yeah, I mean even dungeons too, like both.
Even this season in dungeons, right? A ramp in dungeons is press powered radiance, right?
Well, Oracle has a whole lot more complexity.
True.
Is what I've heard. Like I haven't played Priest at all, but like from what I've just been hearing from like Growl and just like other healers, they really loved how simple and good Disc has felt recently. Except for Oracle. Oracle is like a bit more complex and nuanced, but it's still on the simple side.
Yeah, that there's a few specs that we do not invite helpers on during the Race World First, and Disc is one of them. If there's a helper Disc, there is a 10% chance that they are doing more healing than tanks. It's crazy.
Yeah, it doesn't help that Disc is like bad in 30-player content, right? Like the ramps scale with the size of the group very badly.
Yeah, in this raid though, like it didn't matter because there was so much burst healing requirement that like Disc would top, every non-one-arm bandit thing because like Prez was so good on that fight, but it's still really good. It's just scary. Also, druids, any druid spec, instant non-invite. You need a Mark of the Wild, but like for whatever reason, druid players and helpers are just significantly worse than every other spec besides Disc.
Wow,
dude, druid's hard.
Yeah, and they're really squishy. They just die really easily. And then when you start bringing in helpers, that's the thing you want to not happen. Ret Paladins though, banger. Get as many Ret Paladins in there as possible. Can't die,
yeah.
easy DPS, infinite range.
It's funny because whenever you're on like more casual social medias, like say the Reddit, the WoW Reddit, they always talk about how OP Ret Paladin is, but it's like nobody really plays at a high level. It's just to them, it's really OP because like they
right.
just see, yeah, like they see the paladins, they're pressing the buttons, they're popping off, they don't die, they have great utility. It's really nice for most players.
Well, most players are going to be better at doing mechanics too, because like most players, there's a certain amount of bandwidth you have to like do your full DPS rotation, not die, and like know what's going on. And when you make the requirement a lot smaller for those things, you're just way more aware. So it feels OP. You're like, I can see everything because I don't have to think about other stuff.
I mean,
that's exactly why I like
it's so not
specs.
punishing, right? Like you screw up your rotation a little bit on Ret, it doesn't matter, right? You have 3 holy power, and do you press Judgment, Blade of Light or whatever, or your Spender? And the answer is, who cares? All of them are going to be within like a couple of DPS of each other, right? And so it's we compare that to a lot of other specs where it's like, ooh, you started an aim shot cast on your Hunter when you don't have any stacks of the stuff, like you are griefing your damage by a lot.
Yeah, but it's still fun to play. Like, I mean, I love playing Ret Paladin. Ret Paladin's sweet.
And I'm just saying that's why it's OP. If you're playing like 50th percentile as well as you could be, you're going to be getting 98% of a Ret Paladin DPS potential. Not that much, but you're going to be getting a lot of the potential. Whereas on a lot of specs, it's like, oh, now your dots have fallen off. Like, this is really bad.
But I think it's impressive that it's still a fun, that all of that can be true, and it's still a fun thing to play for people that know what they're doing. I think it's really hard to do that.
I personally, when I'm playing M+, I prefer playing simple specs, because when I'm playing M+, the way I've always said it is I'm playing the game and I'm not playing the class. Whereas in Raid, I usually feel the opposite, because like when I'm doing Raid, I'm playing my character more than I'm playing the game. If that makes any sense.
I kind of get what you're saying.
Yeah,
because like when I'm doing
a lot of the
M+,
comments under our last video were like people talking about enjoying playing with Oracle Disc. I think was from a similar place that you're coming from.
Yeah, like I'm focused on like the mechanics and like looking at the kicks and stops and positioning stuff, just like all the, what would you even call it? Like I'm playing the game rather than I'm like focused on my procs and weak auras and cooldown management and all that.
And absolutely like sweating to stay alive, like that's why I think that comment section and the community reaction to Oracle was so fascinating, because you had priest players, you had every DPS and tank all being like, do not nerf this. I love feeling like this. I'm having objectively more fun because there's a healer this broken. And then meanwhile, every other healer main that specifically isn't playing Disc and currently enjoying it is like, I feel like no one's listening to me. How come only 10% of people agree with you? Well, because only 10% of people are not all of those people. And you're totally right that it should be nerfed, but like everyone's just disagreeing with you. And it had to, I mean, you saw Ellesmere's crashing out on Twitter. Like it's the same, like it's so predictable that would happen because they have to feel like they're going insane.
I can't believe Ellesmere won, by the way.
It was going to happen.
That's all you had to do.
Anytime something is that strong and that represented ever in WoW history, it gets nerfed. Yeah,
I mean, I empathize with people who enjoyed playing with Oracle Disc, but I think it was very clearly true that, the game is not in a healthy place if it's like that, right? Like you want all the healers to be relatively similar to each other. And just because the power level comes in the form of like making the game a lot easier for the rest of your group, it doesn't mean that that's not power level. Like that is an incredibly powerful thing that needs to be budgeted accordingly.
And you can see in the MDI that it's there, right? Like you see 4 healers in the and the high level MDI keys. But the more important thing is, are all 4 or all 6 of the healers getting invited to keys at any level? Right.
Right. Which I think seeing the MDI representation is a good predictor of that. But it's definitely not the whole story. And there have been MDI seasons where I know there's been a lot of MDI seasons where like unholy DK pops off in MDI, and then you don't see it in live keys. That was especially true back when MDI was the speedrun low keys format, not the high key great push format that it is this season. But
what
it
about
is still something
Feral?
to look out for.
Feral and Moonkin in Season 1 Dragonflight. You played Feral in the competitive dungeons, and then everyone just played Moonkin on live instead. Because no one plays Feral.
I will say, though, the getting an invite as a Feral in LFG became 10 times easier than it had previously been after that weekend. Yeah. But it was still hard, right? It's still harder than getting an invite on one of the specs that people, what do you reflexively invite.
If you're like a dev evoker when Og was broken, or if you're a Feral druid when everyone always wants Moonkin, do you just apply and all they see is a druid DPS? They assume that you're the good spec, and then you just hope they start the key before they figure out what you're playing?
It shows your spec, so like they know what you are. However, what you can do is you can sign up as a balance druid, and then once you're in the key, you ninja swap to Feral.
Yeah,
that's a good way to make friends as well, to do that.
Yeah, people
it's really good.
Because if the key doesn't go well, they're not going to blame you at all.
Oh yeah, but you're absolutely catfishing the group. Like you sign up as like a fire mage, and they're fully expecting a fire mage, and then some stinky arcane mage pops up.
But, okay, hang on. Arcane is broken as hell right now.
Right now it is.
Belief.
But
yeah,
normally, arcane druid or not arcane mage is complete dog shit, and I hate playing with arcane mage. But
yeah,
they're actually really good right now.
I like how it's literally catfishing as well. What druids are doing if they're trying to get in as a feral druid. That is sick.
You got to do what you got to do to get invited. I respect everyone out there lying to their group leaders. Keep doing you.
I think the other side of this was on Reddit recently. I saw
keys now.
That's true. Yeah, you just see that it's bad, then you go out and resilient key it.
Yeah, and just kick them.
The other side though is they ask you your spec as well sometimes. I saw a screenshot that was like, "Oh, are you Frost or Unholy?" Frost, and then kicked, right? Like that is also feels bad. Feels bad on either side, right?
Yep, that's Mythic plus in a sentence. Not surprising. Did you guys look at some of Frank's other stuff?
Yes.
Any of that could be interesting. What do you think would be good?
So here I will lead us into this with a very funny story that there's a guild that allegedly purchased a Lockout. I believe this guild was 5 out of 8 Mythic, and they purchased a 7 out of 8 Lockout for a sum of almost 100 million gold apparently. So that they could, instead of progging Bandit and Muggsy, prog Gallywix and get Hall of Fame, which is a really interesting. I mean, it's something you can only do in a tier like this, right? Could you imagine doing that last tier? Like, I guess you could skip Silken Court and maybe save some time, but welcome to Ansarek, right? But especially at the Hall of Fame tuning patch, it's like, okay.
Skipping Bandit and Muggsy, 2 very niche, unique fights that have like pain points that your guild may not be able to solve with comp, right? Like that is so value. Like you were saying, as soon as I actually didn't know about this, but I was like reading, like just listening to what you were saying, and I'm like, that sounds fucking worth. And forget about the getting Hall of Fame thing. Just like as a guild, like as far as time efficiency is concerned, if you have a lot of gold and you can afford to just skip Bandit and Muggsy progression and just go to Galley, that just sounds value. That sounds good for like happiness level,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's huge value.
Are people mad about this? Is that a thing?
So, there's a lot of ragey.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Which makes sense, right? Because like if the Hall of Fame doesn't even necessarily fill when 200 guilds kill it, right? Because if 200 guilds kill it and there's only a couple of hours left in the week, Blizzard will decide it's an extra week. But in theory, it should be a limited amount of spots that are in there, right? And it's like the more guilds that get it, it not only takes it away from other guilds, right? But it's like, this is, going to be a dramatically lower progression guild that will get in the Hall of Fame than several guilds that miss the Hall of Fame, right? So, on the other hand, like, it's just smart, right? If you want Hall of Fame, the way to get it is to kill the end boss. You buy a Lockout. I don't know. I think realistically, the answer is they should probably just change Hall of Fame, so you have to have killed all 8 bosses. Yeah,
I mean, they could. I have no argument against that. That's like, here's why they shouldn't do that. Like, sure, just do it like that. But I read that today on Twitter from Relo, I think, like, oh, it should be this. And then it's like, how many raids in the past or in the future would that ever even be the case for? This is just like such an isolated incident of last boss so easy.
I'm reminded a bit of High Mall Butcher, where you could kill the end boss but skip Butcher, and Butcher was like hard.
Imperator was way harder than Butcher.
Right, but I believe the first guild to kill Imperator hadn't killed Butcher yet, right?
That was Paragon, yeah, but they also... Yeah, they decided to do that. But I don't... for most other guilds, though, I still think... Like, Butcher is a boss that got massively easier with gear, and Imperator did not. So, like, if this was a guild at the same point in farm, or our farm, or their progression, right? Like, it wouldn't make sense to, like, skip Butcher and do that. You would do Butcher, get the gear, and then do Imperator.
Yeah, it's a different situation, but it's like it's the only kind of analog I could think of something similar happening in the past.
Maybe,
but it would kind of make sense any tier, right? Like, yeah, Denathrius, skip SLG, even last tier, right? Like, even though Ansarek is harder than Silken,
people were skipping it last.
It eventually wasn't. Silken Court was eventually harder than Ansarek easily.
Even before, right? Like, the options aren't Ansarek or Silken. The options are Ansarek or Silken plus Ansarek, right? And like, obviously, Ansarek is easier than Silken plus Ansarek. Obviously, you get gear from doing Silken first, but it's not. And the reclear, I guess, that you maybe missed, although maybe you were going to extend anyway. So it kind of would make sense in any tier where the end boss isn't dramatically harder than all the earlier bosses, and you just want to farm them for gear, right? Like, it would kind of always be good to just, especially with the way gear works right now, like, how much gear are you missing out on by not killing Muggsy? Pretty much nothing, right? Like, you guys killed Muggsy and you guys got nothing from that, right?
We still have gotten absolutely nothing.
Yeah, that boss, I don't believe it drops an item that anybody wants, right?
Yeah.
Like,
nah, it drops Muggsy, Jug, whatever.
Yeah, I've never seen that. I'll choose to not believe that can happen. Yeah. But yeah, I think that it is something that maybe will become more of the meta. It's definitely less valuable in most tiers. Like, this is an especially good tier to do it because bosses 6 and 7 are so hard and boss 8 is so easy. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure they're just going to fix it. Like, I don't see any reason why they wouldn't.
How do you guys feel about it ethically?
I mean, it's the same as boosting. That's kind of been like the topic going around, right? Like, the whole idea of just like being able to buy a taxi to the last boss. I don't know. I mean, it's whatever. I don't think it's like a huge deal, but a lot of people will definitely have an issue with it.
I mean, if you lost, like, I don't know how Hall of Fame works, but if you like lost Hall of Fame or they got it and you didn't, and it's because they did that and you didn't do that, I can see that perspective. Absolutely hating it.
Yeah. I think, I don't know. I mean, it's hard to blame a guild for doing this, right? Like, if you're a guild and you see that you have the option to do this.
Yeah, seems great.
Like, it seems like a don't hate the player, hate the game situation to me, where it's like, okay, Blizzard should fix this, but also this is smart by the guild that did it. And also, it's very smart.
A lot of people are trashing on the guild.
The guild that sold the 7 out of 8 lockout for almost 100 million gold. I don't believe that shit, by the way.
There's no shot it was 80 million or whatever it was.
We sold Gallywix for less than that last week, and we could have just not killed Gallywix.
Wait, hold on.
And sold the lockout and made more, right? Like, holy moly.
Oh, anybody need a lockout?
Exactly. Like,
we could pump out so many 7 out of 8s, actually. That sounds worth.
Yeah, I mean, you could do as many as you can do Gallywix's, right? Like, that's well, I guess you can make the 7 out of 8 with 20 people, though, so you get an extra person. Yeah. So maybe it's easy. It's actually probably is easier than selling an 8 out of 8 by a little bit. Is Muggsy with 20 people easier than Gallywix with 19? Is the question. I think yes, but I think it's close.
First time kill? I don't know. I can tell you in farm, I think they're in farm, Gallywix is easier with 19 than Muggsy is. I don't know. They both die really fast. But for a new guild, I feel like Galley would be harder with 19. Like, first time kill than Muggsy with 20.
P1 gets very inflexible with 19 as well.
P1's just hard. P1 Galley is something that is like in a reclear you wipe on a decent amount of time. Just a good mythic phase. And if you get past P1 though, it's like, if you don't kill it after you've killed it a few times, it's like something has gone crazy wrong, because like, how could you wipe at that point?
We wiped once on our first Gallywix sale. We wiped once in P2 and it was to a bug. It was the Giga Coils just went off even though we threw the bomb in, and we were just taking ramping raid damage from it, even though we did the fight perfectly. we spent like a bunch of time looking logs. But yeah, that's the only way you could wipe once you know the fight.
Actually, though, if they swapped P1 and P2, I think Gallywix would actually be a significantly harder fight. Because a lot of the difficulty is it's super front loaded, so you can just spend a lot of your pulls practicing the beginning of the fight, and like once you get it down, then you've like figured out the fight for the most part. But if you had to go through like 5 minutes of the fight before you get to P1, that would change the fight entirely.
Yeah. It's also exactly why most like end of boss secret phases are not actually difficult, because it would be super unfair to give you like an insanely hard phase what used to be like 12 or 13 minutes into the fight. It'd be like, this is so crazy. There's a reason it's easy.
Yeah, that's how Farrak and Tindril felt.
Oh, Farrak was like Fyrak. Was it Farrak or Fyrak, by the way? Open to interpretation. You can use either. Okay, the Fyrak was maybe the biggest case of that ever, because the fight got exponentially harder going from like 7 to 8 seeds. And that was only happening at the very, very, very end of the fight, like at 10 minutes, which was so insane. If you wonder why it was like, oh, well, this is the race where every guild is wiping really low, it's because like wiping really low at that late in the tier was basically like having a P1 wipe. Like you were going to get there, but there was just like a 5% chance you were going to be able to do the last 5% of the boss's HP.
Yeah. The hardest part is when that's combined with a really hard tuned early part of the fight, right? I think Jailer was maybe a decent example of that, where it was like P3 was really hard, but P2 was also really hard, and P1 was also kind of hard. And so you were progging P3, but you were still, if you weren't locked in, you were having a lot of P1 and P2 wipes, right? And like those fights are always super tough, because then you don't build momentum on the progression part of the fight either.
Absolutely.
So
if there's ever once every hour where you can have a regression period in an early phase, it just absolutely adds so much time to the fight.
Even
because
Bandit. Bandit's like
Bandit is exactly like that. I was thinking Tindril was very much like that. Ansarek is absolutely like that. Like the only way you make progress on Ansarek is if you're in the last phase every pull, and it's just so hard to do that. Mugsy not like that. Isn't Mugsy like an automatic P2 once you're good at it?
Yeah, I mean, there's some prog to do in P1, but yeah, once you are good at it,
once you're in it,
you'll
it's
see
like
a lot of P2
pull.
pulls. Yeah, unless you're griefing.
What were you saying, Dork?
It's also some of the worst feelings in progression when you get to the regression state. I kind of talked about this. I was saying how like I hate when raids get to that point where like you've figured out the first 2 phases and then you're just wiping to the dumb shit over and over.
Which thing are you referring to specifically? Actual regression or fights that make you think you're regressing when you're actually not? Like, which one is more common and more frustrating? Like the fight where you know exactly what you're supposed to do and people are just wiping to it, and then vibes get down, and then you just end your raid night making no progression, like actual regression, or fights like One Arm Bandit where you get a 4% wipe and then you're just mad until you kill it, but realistically you need way more pulls to kill it because you're not good enough at it yet.
Probably the first one.
So I think the first one happens way more often in the guilds with bigger skill disparities between their best and worst players. Oh, yeah. So I don't think it's something that you have to experience too much of, Max, compared to the general population.
Oh, okay.
So I think that is I think both are frustrating, but I think that the second one is kind of unavoidable even for a good guild.
The second one drives me insane.
Yeah. The first one is something where like, if you just kick bad players, eventually you become world first and don't have that happening to you or whatever. And
well, it's also people usually just like lose focus in the middle of the night, like where you've gotten to the point where you've pulled P1 and P2 so many times that people have like started to slack off in those early phases, and you just have like the dumbest deaths.
Have you guys raided or like helped raid with teams? Just like maybe lower, like you raid in your main guild and then like you also progress on like maybe like a way lower ranked like guild with almost everyone who has jobs, and they raid like after 5 p.m. at some point. Have you guys done that?
That's like my friend raids, I guess.
I haven't, but some of my guildies do.
I've noticed a phenomenon in the few times that I've done that, and it could be anecdotal, but it happened in like 3 different guilds that fit that description. And that like regression point happened at the exact same point every night. And maybe I'm reading too much into it, but it's like everyone's at work all day. These are weeknight raids. And then you raid for a few hours. They get back from work. Or you get back from work, you raid for a few hours. They're like, oh, I'm excited to raid tonight. This is good. And then you take that like mid to late raid break. And it's like people are like, I've been working all day. I had a first 2 hours of WoW raid. I was feeling great. I'm feeling good right now, but I'm gonna relax and sit in my chair, appreciate this break. I have very rarely seen guilds come back from that specific break and make meaningful progression. It's usually like wiping until the end of the night, and I wonder if there's anything to that, or
dude,
if
that is
100%
real. Yeah, it is actually so fucking real. Because I remember when I was in college and raiding, and if you're just like if you got through a long day, you come back to do raid night. It actually gets so exhausting. In fact, I don't even know how the fuck people raid. Because I know that's like a lot of raiders. I have no idea how people do this shit where they're just like they go through an entire day of like whatever they're doing, whether it's like school or work. And then they come home, they have their food, dinner, whatever, and they just like jump straight into raid and they're just in there for like 4 hours. Like that seems brutal.
Yeah, this is something where it happened to the extent that for a while in my guild we were just like, okay, what if we just don't take that break? But then it's like, okay, you're raiding for 4 hours and like somebody's got to pee. What are you gonna do, right? So you do the /break 3 or /break 4 or something, and try and not let it be a long enough break for people to sit back in their chair.
Dude, are there no regulations for that?
No, there's no OSHA or anything, and
there should be, but no, like that's why I wonder when you're comparing guilds that raid like different hours. Like maybe there's a guild that raids 4 nights a week, 3 hours a night, versus a guild that raids 4 nights a week and 5 hours a night. I think those extra 2 hours, because both of those guilds are filled with wages, right? They're filled with people that are working normal jobs. They're getting to the raid at the point where they're already done with their day, kind of, right? I think those extra 2 hours are so fake. Like it's very, very rare that you're making any meaningful progression with that. It probably helps early in the season when you just need to farm gear and do like splits and stuff. But like when you're actually just purely progressing bosses, I wonder if someone were to do a study of the value of those extra 2 hours in a full guild of workers, like how valuable they are. Well, the end after when you normally take that break after 3 hours or whatever, you just end your fucking raid, go next, and you just go to your next raid. And basically just saying like the 2 hours of not raiding, how much value would it even be raiding specifically after you take that break?
I mean, but these guilds are already raiding so little hours and they can't really make meaningful progression.
Yeah, okay, but so comparing 4 nights 3 hours to like 4 nights 4 hours and 4 nights 5 hours.
Okay, but I mean that's like mad hours. Like let's talk about like an 8 to 9 hour guild.
Yeah, okay, so like a 3x3.
If you're taking out 2 hours, that's
3x3. I'm just saying they're doing the right thing. Like I'm saying that's the most valuable, efficient time to raid, because if you have a bunch of workers, if what we're all saying is true, the things we've all realized is actually like a widespread thing, then like you raiding 3 hours is actually like super efficient.
Yeah. Like I bet you could quantify it. You could do like the marginal progression value of each hour, and it's probably like 1 and 2 are probably both like 100%. 3 is probably like 98% or something like that, and then like 4 is maybe 70%, and 5 is maybe like 50%.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Like that, right? Like you're probably dumpstering your that hour is probably only worth a half hour if you did it in a fresh night.
How does this apply to Mythic Plus? Like, have you ever noticed if you're doing maybe not like a day of Mythic Plus, but maybe some night Mythic Plus, and you time a couple of keys, you're feeling good, and you're like, man, I can't wait to do keys for the next few hours. You take like a little food break, and then you come back, and then you just absolutely run it down in keys. Is that something you've noticed?
Well, I mean, but that's kind of the beauty of M Plus. Like, you just play whenever you want. Like, there's no scheduled time to it. So
so when you have that feeling, you just stop.
Yeah, and then you can just always come back like at some other point. I mean, that's like pretty much Greg, like the Greg that we play with. Like he's a pretty busy dude. He's like a giga civilian. I call him giga civilian because he's like the ultimate civilian. He's like a civilian, except he's like really good at the game. And he just like he'll like have like a work meeting, so he'll be able to like play for like 1 key, and then he's got his meeting, and then he got like dinner with his wife, and then he'll come back later. He'll have like time for like a key or two. So he just kind of like spaces it out, and it works out really well for him. I will say it is very common in keys though, where people will play for a bit and their brains get mega fried.
Yeah, makes sense.
I think it's not exclusively a wagey thing as well. Like I think that you can just like that can be true of people even who play video games all day.
Oh, of course, because like, what are you saying with wages? It's like you're saying they get home. By the way, the word wages is so funny, but the
so good.
when you get home from work, you're saying like, why would you be impacted later in the night? It's like, oh, because you've like already had a full day. You've been exerting yourself mentally or physically for let's just say 8 hours. So like you're at the point where you're near the end of your day anyway. But like, yeah, someone who plays games all day, if they've been gaming for 8 hours, I guess you could argue if they were trying real hard, probably the same thing, So yeah, not surprising. Like think of MDI practice, like, like probably not something super relatable to a lot of people, but when you're like locked in for that full like day of raid and like pulls are already starting to go bad and you're like, man, I didn't get good sleep last night, I don't know about this. And then you just look up at the clock and you're like, man, we have 8 more hours of MDI practice, don't we?
Bro, that shit is exhausting. Dude,
Yeah.
I'm also one of the people in my groups where I'm like pushing for the hours. Like I know whenever I'm playing with Goop would be one of the people who just like wants to call it early or like just try to preserve our energy or whatever. Or like if we're not making too good of progression. But I'm like always pushing the hours. I'm like, all right, like we can easily go for 12 or 13. Like we just gotta keep trying. Just get some more reps in.
I had a conversation similar to this with an NA league player that like played pro LCS for many, many years. And I was like, like what's like the main difference? Like, or people were talking about sports science, like, oh, you actually don't want to like practice all day. You want to, make sure there's adequate breaks and time for your mental to recover. And then the time you put in is like more valuable and like all this science and stuff. And I was like, and he was like, yeah, like people say that, but then like you're just going to get Astro shit on by a Korean team that just plays actually 16 hours a day of scrims every single day
true.
For like 6 months. And like, it's like you can make all those arguments, but like the person that's just playing more than you is just going to be better.
Yeah.
I think that it's like a characteristic of different people that you can work on, but is also partially just like innate, is how well you can play, hours 5 through 16 of the day. And if you're bad at that, you might look great. That's part of the reason I think why there are people that just look great in a guild and they join a Race to World First guild and like it doesn't work out. And I think a lot of times it's because they're good at hours 1 through 4, right? And hours 5 through 16, they're just not good at. And I think it's the same with League, right? Like, yeah, you're going to lose to somebody who is playing 16 hours a day. And it's not necessarily even true that you could play 16 hours a day and beat them, right? Like you would need to also be or become the kind of person that actually plays those later hours well, right? And there are things you can do to help, but also some of it is just based on your age and your genetics and stuff like that, right? Like
I'm of the opinion that you can train that.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like
you 100%.
You got to be built
it's somewhat trainable, right? And then somewhat not, right? Like
so.
Yeah, of course. There's like definitely a lot of factors.
We talked about this during the race, which is like something that specifically challenges this line of thinking about whether you go late or not, right? So we've had issues in the past where we would stay up for 15 hours every single day. We were a 15-hour raid night guild. And then usually we would try to cut an hour early and like go to bed early. And the feedback from raiders is I don't do that. Like if we cut raid early, I can't do that after raiding like this for 2 weeks. Why? Because like, your biology as a human is you are literally training your body in the 15th hour of you being awake that we're locked in right now. We're gaming. That's what you're teaching your body that even in that short of amount of time. So going to sleep's really hard. The inverse is also true. If you're raiding like we did this tier, 14 hours a night, and you want to push to that 15th hour, that shouldn't be hard, right? In previous tiers, we did 15 hours every day. We can add an extra hour. We're getting close to the end of the race. Every time we did that, we played like fucking dog shit. And why? Because you've trained your body for the last few weeks to when it's time for that 15th hour, we're walking home and going to bed right now. So a certain percentage of your team is going to not lock in because literally you as a human have been trained to do that now. And then, if a certain amount of people do that, you're not really going to make progression. You're going to play bad. All those things make sense. Even in a short amount of time, you can train your brain to when you need to be locked in and when you're not.
I think it's also a little bit different in your circumstance because your 12, 15 hours or whatever it is like that you're in the tournament already. You're already in real time. Whereas for League of Legends players or like MDR or TGP, those 12, 15 hours, you're just practicing. Like you're just trying to get reps in, you're just trying to practice. And when tournament time comes around, you're not spending all that time. Like you're actually trying to get more rest before the tournament actually starts. So it's definitely a little bit different. It's more like a marathon versus like a bodybuilding competition or something.
Yeah, that's why it's been really hard to get outside like input on like, okay, we're trying to do this better. How much sleep do we need? How many breaks we need? Stuff like that. And there's like just very few things that humans do on this earth that are similar to exerting yourself for 15 hours a day for 2 straight weeks.
Yeah, it is. It's a very strange, like it's for 2 weeks, which is long enough that it's like right in the midpoint, right? Between, because there are people that, are training are doing something like League, right, where it's like, okay, we got to play this hard for seasons, right, for like all season practice, right? But that is a longer time horizon. And then there's the people who are like, okay, we're staying up for 48 hours doing this thing, right? And like both of those are, I think, fairly studied areas, but 2 or 3 weeks specifically is a very distinctive thing of the Race to World First, right? Super interesting topic. How much do you guys like prep the sleep schedule in the lead up to the race? Like how hard enforced is bedtime and stuff? And when do you start that going into
we used to be really strict about it, and then we learned that people just kind of do their own thing, and especially people who've been doing it for multiple tiers, they know like how long it takes for them to acclimate. I think science would tell you that for like multiple weeks you would want to be waking up at the right time. I guess this is part of the good reason for us having maintenance is we don't actually have to massively change gamers' sleep schedule, because our realms for 3 straight tiers have come up at 12:01 or 12:03 p.m. So we want to wake up at like 10 or 11, which is when 90% of the Pacific time, which is when 90% of the guild wakes up anyway. So that works. It's actually kind of nice. The opposite of that is Echo, for example. Their servers come up at like 5 a.m. or something. So they have meetings at 5 a.m. for months leading up to the tier, literally for the reason of making sure everyone's bodies is like ready to be up and play at that time. And we would probably do something similar. It's just that we don't have the option of starting at 5 a.m. So I think it kind of works out in that way.
Dude, this reminds me of this is a conversation that happened in my guild like last week. Somebody was like, "Yeah, I woke up at 6:40 today," and the other person goes, "Oh yeah, I had to wake up really early today as well." And the first person says PM. Yeah.
Oh yeah, we have a few Fired Up and Shack stay up until they wake up at like 5 p.m. every day if we don't have raid. And then they just like look for a Discord ping, and then they log in at 1 p.m. Pacific, which is when we start our raid there. And then they do that right up until the raid starts as well, which is science would tell you is not smart, but it's also just they've done this enough to where like, what are you going to do? You're going to force them to do it?
Yeah,
they can't do that.
That's super interesting.
You guys want to do the Patreon queue?
Yes, I also. Okay, yeah. Well, let's do the Patreon question, then we can think about if we want to do the one of the other things that Frank wrote down. But let's do the Patreon question now. This one comes from Dustin that says, if you had to pick a single game that has the best skill transfer to high-end WoW PvE, both the Race to World First and World First M+, what game would it be? And the context for this question is, I was watching Virtual play Trackmania and was super impressed with the consistency and ability to sight read situations of Trackmania players, doing hundreds of runs perfectly, only changing one thing by a few milliseconds run to run is super impressive, but it obviously lacks the RNG that occurs in WoW. Trackmania is 100% deterministic physics. Then I thought about Boomy coming from Brawlhalla, and at least from my view, how good gamers like him and Fired Up are reacting to minutiae in the moment. Then I thought about the value in grander strategy, the ability to see the whole raid/key and how it's going, and make bigger calls or adjustments. I know WoW's pretty unique with regards to raid and M+, but what game do you think has the most transferable skill?
What do you guys think?
So I think we should not, like, the obvious answer is probably just Final Fantasy because it's the closest analog to the game.
Yeah, no MMORPGs.
Yeah, let's say like a more different type of game.
I would probably say League of Legends personally.
Okay. Yeah.
Why?
Well, it just has like very similar.
I've thought about this question so much, so I'm interested in what you think, especially Mythic.
Realistically, nothing really comes close to World of Warcraft. Because I feel like the complexity in playing WoW comes from just like being able to do all the, what do you even call it, like calculations in your head of like, all right, so these are my procs, these are my cooldowns, and just like having that.
That line of thinking is baked into your brain, maybe.
Yeah, that, and like something about the amount of information that you're taking in this game compared to almost any other game is not really comparable.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Basically, in any game, and you can even feel this in WoW, when you're playing your main versus an alt, how much more information you're downloading around you based on how comfortable you are with it. So basically any game that has similar, I guess, like thoughts about healing or defensives or like, you know, same kind of cooldowns and procs and stuff like that, those will transfer really well, because you're just getting closer to being able to see everything around you and not thinking about yourself playing, you're just doing. But that being said, at least for people that have made it to my guild, which is the, like, you know, the very, very highest pinnacle, like you are going to be a really, really good gamer. I have seen players from this guild, if they're ever like really passionate about another game, no matter what it is, if it's Hearthstone, if it's TFT, if it's League, if it's Valorant, if it's CSGO, anything, PUBG, they are fucking freaks at these games. Like they are challenger, they're global elite, they are at the very, very highest level. I doubt they could play pro, just because I don't think almost anyone in the game, in gaming, can play pro in a game that is their second game. Like unless their main game and the second game are very similar, like Valorant and CS, or like literally like basically the same. Don't get mad by me saying they're the same game, but like the same kind of game, to where if you were to shift that passion, like I basically think my argument is the game that you are currently pro in has to be the number one game for you at the time. If it's ever not, it can swap to something else maybe, but while something else is number one, your number two can never be something you go pro in. That's just not giving enough respect for the people that were there. It's their number one game. You can't make up that passion and caring about it. But yeah, any side hobby game they play, they fucking smoke it. They're insane at everything, and that's why I've struggled with this question, because I don't find anything similar within any of those games. They're vastly different games. They're obviously, we've had raiders that are like great at ARPGs, like Ben and Exile and Impact and a few other people. But like same thing with League, same thing with shooters. I've just noticed that there's a very high level of everything. If you've made it to this point, and I haven't been able to find anything that's like, oh, WoW players are playing this game, it means they're the GOAT. I have not found that. It seems to be like, my take is, if you are ever fucking sick at any game, like as close as you can be, or like as good as you can be at a game, if you ever care about another game, and my take is, no matter what that game is, and you put in that same time and effort and passion, you're going to be fucking nuts at that game, because there's just some people that are just great at gaming. I think like universal gaming skills transferable is 100%. My thought. After,
I mean, a lot of it is just like understanding how to adapt to your new gaming environment. Like if they just know what the steps are to becoming good, that's all that matters. And I actually recently saw this. I was watching Peekaboo playing Elden Ring. It's kind of funny, but he's actually a bit. It's a pretty enjoyable playthrough to watch, but he's actually popping off in that game. Like, not gonna lie, he's actually doing extremely well in that game.
Okay, we're watching the same stream where he spent 7 hours trying to kill Melania, and like,
well, yeah, but I mean, like, you know, he's doing it.
He has more than 1,000 deaths.
What?
Okay, I don't know. I mean,
Melania's fucking hard, bro.
It is. That's a hard boss.
Yeah, I mean, he's doing it with like, you know, minimal.
He's also trying to entertain, which is his job too. Like I promise you, he does less deaths and stuff off stream rather than trying to say something funny every time he dies. You know,
like watching him fight against bosses, though, I think there's like some core parts of fighting a Souls boss that he just hasn't quickly picked up, which is like, you know, trying to like dodge in and get some hits in while you can, and like learning that they have, like, he's playing it a lot more like a PvP game where he's going to get punished by doing certain things, and that's just like not always how those bosses work.
But do you think that, using my argument, right, do you think that Elden Ring is a game that he is as passionate about as like WoW Arena? Nah, it's like a side gig streaming for entertainment. Elden Ring will get a lot of views choice, I'm pretty sure. Not like, I played a Souls game and I fucking love this shit, so now I'm going to go as hard as possible. Those two things would be approached very differently.
Yeah, like he could if he wanted to.
I think Dorki, I think you hit on something that's really important. You said as long as people like know the process of getting good. Mm-hmm. I think people that are good at games, at least this is true of everyone in my guild, they are literally fucking obsessed with that. They're obsessed with getting better. And like when you get to a new game, and everyone's different. Some people are okay not being good at games. A lot of people that are in this guild are not okay with that. Like the idea of playing a game that you're going to spend time on and playing it casually is not an option. You are going to want to be as good as possible, not because you need to be better than everyone else, but because you just find the process of getting better so interesting. So if you go through the process of, oh, I did this wrong, why? It's not really someone else's fault. It's probably mine. Or even if it was majorly someone else's fault, maybe it was kind of my fault and I could have done a small thing better. And when you start learning how to like look at those things and you really want to shore them up, you can get really fucking good at stuff really fast. And I think that trait is probably the singular thing that makes that statement true.
Yeah, do you guys have those circles of friends where like who are the good gamers and who are the not so good gamers? I have like a group of friends that are like this, and I know for a fact that if I'm playing with like this, and this person, they're just gonna do extremely well at whatever new game we're playing, and then we'll have like a couple other players that I know will be like the more less
Yeah.
skilled players. They're like probably more casual.
Yeah. I think it's definitely true. There's general transferable, gamerness.
I have played with players in WoW, though, that were sick WoW players that rated in this guild that were absolutely trash at every other game they played. And there's one major defining characteristic, and is that they didn't fucking care.
Right. Yeah, that's like in my guild, that's true. We'll do like a Valorant in-house, and we've got somebody who's immortal or whatever at that, and then a bunch of us that are just like, we would be silver or bronze or whatever, right? Because we don't care about that game, and we're playing to, try and do a 360 no scope or something, right? And like that's a... There are some people who don't have that capability, though, to engage with games that way, like you said, where it's like, if they started playing a Valorant in-house and they selected it, their two options would be to either stop playing those in-houses or get a lot better, right? Like, they don't have the capacity to just kind of suck at something long-term. But yeah, I do think there's not one game that is especially transferable to WoW. I will say there's one surprising game that I think is somewhat or type of game that I think is somewhat transferable to WoW. And that's like, you ever play any like resource management board games? I've noticed that people who are good at WoW tend to be quite good at that. Like, not always. There are definitely some people that are good at WoW mechanically, but not especially, they don't think about it that way. But there's a type of WoW player that is good at identifying like, oh, we need to pull twice as big here because we're about to deplete, or like, oh, damage doesn't matter on this fight, so I should do this, or like, oh, damage to this ad is the important thing here. And I've noticed that correlates pretty strongly with being good at a game that's about like Catan, for instance, right? Where it's like, oh, how valuable is wood versus sheep in this moment, right? Like,
what's my win condition?
Exactly. Like having that thought process of like, what's my win condition? How valuable are these 5 different variables that keep changing in value compared to each other? That is, I think, a muscle that is surprising compared to all of the, like, because I think League of Legends is pretty easy to, you can see how like, okay, there's a lot of transferableness here, but that was something that I was thinking about as kind of a sleeper.
Yeah,
I actually feel like that's a general gaming skill. At least that's what I think about when I'm playing all sorts of games. So I've been playing this Souls game called Kazan. Game is hard as hell, by the way, and it's been a lot of fun. And I actually go through that exact thought process too. I think about like, all right, is it worth me trying to dodge this right now, or should I just block it instead?
Right.
Like, what am I really gaining from doing this instead of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that skill is just a good general life skill and a good gamer skill. But I think it is one, like, of the things that are difficult in WoW, doing that well is especially valuable because it's like you can get a lot of value out of that, especially if you're not in the very top guilds in the world and very top M+ teams in the world where you kind of need to maximize everything. If you can actually do a good assessment of where your effort should be going, that pays extreme dividends in WoW, I think, especially.
So
it's actually so true.
If you are someone who enjoys playing WoW and you're listening to this question and you're like, well, I think a good transferable skill could be like this exact game because I know a bunch of people who play WoW in this exact game. And I don't know if that's necessarily the best way to look at it too. I was just trying to think of a rebuttal. And I think that would be one that people would give. But I think that there's just, like, for example, if you're a Blizzard player, you play a lot of WoW, you're going to play other Blizzard games. So people playing like Diablo, super not important, or not super not important, super not surprising. And then same thing in the future. Yeah, not important.
Yeah.
And then same thing with like PoE, just like I think in the Diablo gets you into the ARPG category, and then you explore other ARPGs. So like seeing WoW players, I think WoW and Diablo were like very similar player base for a very long time. So seeing those branch out in the same way is not surprising. But I don't think that like playing an ARPG makes you better at WoW or playing WoW makes you specifically better in an ARPG, really. I think it's just maybe that interaction. But I wonder, it's kind of a separate question. Do you guys think playing other games makes you better at WoW? Or do you think that playing other varied different kinds of game just in general makes you an overall better gamer rather than someone that plays a very specific kind of game for a really long period of time?
It's funny because historically, WoW was like a game where if you looked at the people who like cleared Naxxramas back the first time, the amount of those people who played other games was probably vanishingly small because WoW used to just demand your full time to play it, right? Like to be at the top level. But I suspect nowadays that like if you had 100 hours a week to budget and your goal was to become the best WoW gamer ever, you probably would still want to put most of it into WoW, but I bet you would do some like you know how colleges require you to do some general education stuff? Like I bet there'd be some value in doing some other games.
Yeah, so I would say WoW back then is not the same as WoW now. WoW back then was definitely a lot more knowledge based. It was more about just like knowing how to get ahead, whether it's like, all right, like knowing all the classic stuff, like knowing how to quickly level or knowing where to farm certain stuff. That type of skill is definitely very different from what it takes to be good at WoW nowadays. But I will say something that's not utilized enough by WoW players is to train their mechanics, whether it's like, training their reaction or training their movement.
Yeah, you gotta play Osu.
Yeah, like it really actually really helps a lot. Just like doing drills, I guess. Yeah, I mean, like that's what people do in other games, right? And it's not something people do in World of Warcraft.
Is it weird that WoW doesn't have an aim labs? I guess just go into a key.
What would you do? I feel like it's most anything that you could be like, okay, specifically training your reaction is going to be really good. I would actually personally make the argument. I don't know if that's something you do in WoW. I think every minute you could be spending doing that, if you could spend just actually playing the game, that minute is better spent, in my opinion. Like, if
I think there's a lot of stuff outside of playing the game, like creating weak ores and understanding how to like make your UI work. At least that's what I do oftentimes.
UI is huge.
Yeah, like when I'm not in a key or in raid, I am actively trying to fix my UI to the point where I'm like, all right, so I'm not utilizing this proc enough. I should try to make this proc more visible in my UI, or I need to keep good uptime on my Sigil of Flame or whatever. Like that's actually something I've been doing recently on my Demon Hunter. I've been making all these weak auras to help out with that type of stuff. Or like in the dungeon scenario where I notice I'm not really seeing these casts from a certain mob, but maybe I'll like make a sound for it. So I definitely count that as part of it.
So I think this is okay. So have you guys ever heard the statement from a shooter player where they're like, I can watch a POV of someone never take a shot, and I can just see how they're pre-aiming and see how they're moving, and I could guess within a pretty close margin how good they are at the game without ever seeing them shoot.
Yeah.
I think in WoW, there's something similar to that. First of all, with someone's movement, I think you could just watch someone move for a decent amount and you'd be able to tell if they're proficient or not. But I think people's ability to alter their UI, just like Dorki is saying, and some people may dislike this actually, that's part of being good at this game. I think that's fair argument. But like, okay, like Dorki, if he has a weak aura on his screen that's taking up a decent amount of space, and then he were to watch a POV of his VOD and notice that he's not actually paying attention to that weak aura, it'd be in his best interest to immediately remove it. Because why would you want something on your screen that you're training your brain to ignore things that are popping up, right? That's really bad, because then when you have things pop up that are important, you are literally more likely to ignore it. And then the inverse of that is also true, right? Where you notice, hey, I'm missing this specific stop, or on this pack, I'm just never really aware when this thing is happening. The best thing you can do is what your brain is telling you is, hey, on this specific pack, I'm overloaded. Either the ability to do damage here, what I'm already dodging or trying to stay alive, is enough to where I'm missing this other thing that's happening. That means the cognitive requirement of this pull is just a little higher, and I need a little help. That's what add-ons and weak auras are great for, right? So like you can make a specific sound for that exact thing. And why I'm tying this all together with the shooter game thing is I think you can tell people's general skill level in the game just by how much they optimize their UI. If you look at someone that downloaded the Liquid Raid Pack and just enabled literally every single weak aura, and you know for a fact when that tank weak aura pops up on a DPS player, you know they're not looking at that. You can tell, and that maybe that this isn't a bad thing, that they don't really care about their performance that much enough to think about it to actually optimize it. They're kind of just like, I'll just have this stuff on my screen and I'll pay attention to some of it. But there's an extra level with people who get super good where that would never happen. Like you care way too much about information flow on your screen to your brain, and that you would look at that. So you could basically look at someone's UI package on maybe one pull and tell how much they care about how well they're doing.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of like pretty good people who have a lot of unnecessary stuff still on their UI, and like
true.
It
and I think
as
all
long
those
as it's
people
not
would
near
be
the
better.
middle of their screen, it's usually not the end of the world. But yeah, I agree with you that like if you do see somebody who doesn't have that going on, that is a strong indicator.
It's a common trait of someone who's a little lost in your key is that they're confused. And we've even seen this in the race. Like we had a player mess up on Halandris's bombs a little bit, and I just like took one look at his PUV, and he had like 2 bomb weak auras, and one of them was like behind his debuffs, and it was like, dude, like you're just making this way harder on yourself. We changed it, and his success rate instantly went up, right? So like you can work on that stuff for sure.
Yeah, I do think there are a lot of people who are frustrated that is such an important part of being a good raider, and I think that's reasonable.
Right. I think they're right.
I think they are right, but also like you will do better if you get over it.
One of the biggest issues in WoW, I think. Oh yeah, I guess like the cooldown manager is coming out next patch too. I think that's low key massive.
Yeah,
that's so good.
If you look at the image they showed of it in their patch notes as well, like it's not just a cooldown manager. Like this thing can be a replacement for. It's not just like major cooldowns. Like you can use this as the middle of your screen
weak aura pack. It could directly replace that. And that's the thing that I notice whenever you have to play an alpha and you can get 0 add-ons on it. The thing that if I'm doing dungeons, I've trained my brain for better or worse to look at my important things on a bar in the middle of my screen. Like most other good players in the game, they have done that, right? Because it's good. But then when you have to like move that stuff to the bottom of your screen, or you have to do some weird like action bar thing in the middle, like it's just a little worse. And like having that cooldown manager built in game for those specific situations lets me know that for most other people trying to implement that or use that, it would be just so helpful. Have you guys seen the responses to it?
No.
Maybe I'm doing this to myself, kind of like our zoo conversation last week. But I like looked at WoW's tweet of it. I think it was the official Warcraft Twitter, and they were like, "We're announcing this cooldown manager," and just all of the things are like. I just read the top comments and it was just like, why do we need this in the fucking game? Oh, well, this looks just like an add-on. Good job, Blizzard. Like this is why I'm just going to have to disable this thing, even though you'd have to enable it in the first place. But like, I don't know why I do this to myself. I guess I'm trying to be like Dratnos. I want to learn how to go to the zoo every day and love it.
Yeah. I mean, okay, with the responses to a tweet like that from the WoW account, even I don't venture there, but
what is that? If that's not the zoo, where is that?
Yeah, no, you're I prefer the like drama between people rather than people yelling at companies. That's my my favorite kind of drama, but it's fair. Both are fair. To each their own. I think that it's interesting because like the people that have that complaint, like I don't know, how much would you complain about a feature of the UI, literally the same feature, if it was an add-on versus done by Blizzard? I think even if it was literally the same thing, for a lot of people, if it's just something you can enable without having to do a whole add-on manager and any of that stuff, like that inherently is just way better, right? Again, it doesn't affect us at all, but for like a new player or somebody who's been playing for like a couple months, the fact that cool, like especially if it just has a good default, if there's a good if you can just check one box and it puts like
your major cooldowns
pretty
on the
top, good, weak aura pack thing in the middle of your screen, like that is huge for the game. And there are people that have a problem with add-ons because they don't like the look of it, but I think a huge problem that people have with it is just like it's extra upkeep and annoying work, and picking one is tough to do, and like it's out of date when the new patch comes out always, and that's annoying, right? And like all of those issues just inherently wouldn't be a problem if it was a automatic Blizzard thing.
I see it as people don't like it that the game has gone to this point. That's probably what they're complaining about the most. Which I mean, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah, because like they just don't like that you require all these. I mean, not require. It's like a bit of a strong word, but the fact that the game has gone to this point is probably what they're mad about.
Well, they dislike that there is a UI that isn't the default UI as it's been since 2003 with your buttons at the bottom of the screen.
More that like like that you need all this stuff to like play the game. So like you need to be like tracking all these different cooldowns and procs. Which I mean, I think there is some
I see
fair criticism to that, because you remember how there was that whole discussion. When was this? It was when I think it was Thune that made that video where like when you show the tooltip of one of your healing abilities, there's just like 50,000 different procs or whatever.
Yeah. Mist Reaver healing is another good example of this, right? Where it's like an individual Mist Reaver heal is for like 10k, and then they have 6 different massive multipliers on it that they need to have going to actually have it heal.
I mean, when we looked at the representation of Ret Paladins and BM Hunters earlier, doesn't this also like kind of, it's the exact same argument? Like there's just a lot of
like you just want your buttons to do what they do.
Exactly. And in particular, if you were somebody who you want to play the game without thinking about that, it becoming more like more easy to do, more of an option is something you wouldn't like, right? Like you would be annoyed about a way to play the game that you didn't want to do becoming more the default, even though it's not a default, like it's still opt in. Just the fact that more people will be doing it and there'll be more expectation for everybody to be having a good, cooldown manager.
Think this is particularly true with rogues. People have been complaining about how rogue has been designed since beginning of Dragonflight or sometime around there, where it's like, a lot of people probably want to play rogue, but they don't like how rogue plays right now. It's just like it's too much. And it's kind of crazy that rogue is the least played class right now, or one of the least played classes.
Because it used to be super popular.
Very popular,
It's a pretty popular class archetype.
Like assassination usually meets people with like a reasonable spec, but like both sub and its cooldown management, and then outlaw and I think it's just its speed.
APM is crazy with outlaw right now, and it's not just like APM in terms of inputs. It's like the amount of times that you have 0.5 seconds to think about the next button, and something there's like multiple variables. That, it's huge. It's like there's a player in my guild who is quite good and plays a lot of different specs, and that was too much for him, and like that was crazy.
It also doesn't help that we're in an aging player base. In fact, I have a question for you guys. What is the average age of a WoW player nowadays?
Which category of WoW player? Like the Mythic just Plus in general, main, in general, so hard because I think there's like people in their 40s and 50s who don't raid and just collect shit and will for the rest of their life.
Yeah, I mean, they add to the average for sure.
Yeah. I mean, the average WoW player, it's got to be 40, maybe 40.
Holy, I was
okay. The average person with an active WoW sub,
35.
God, I think I'd still take the under on 35, but
I mean, high level WoW
on 32.
High level WoW, it's way lower.
32. I like 32.
Like people who play in our guilds, people who do like really high level Mythic Plus, absolutely trends lower.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense
than the average, but I would say around there. I don't know. I think we're maybe underrating the amount of people that were like young adults when this game came out and are now approaching 50 that still play WoW all the time.
Yeah.
Let me ask ChatGPT.
But I also think a large percentage of that player base are also the like, this game was way better when I was younger and I fucking hate it right now. Like, I doubt there's a lot of 30-year-olds ripping that shit.
What about classic versus retail? Like, how much older do you think the average classic player is than retail, or younger? If you,
I don't. Okay, this is maybe a hot take because you'd think it's a lot older. Yeah, but like, I actually don't know because the few times I've run into people IRL, either playing hockey or just meeting people that recognize Team Liquid or me, and I ask them like what they do. It's almost always classic, and they're not old. They're like, I'm was just in the video game community in 2019, and then Classic came out, and it was my first introduction to WoW. And I think so that's why I think Classic would be lower than you think, but I think certainly older than retail, but not as old as you think.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that it's the game that has the big views on Twitch more often than retail definitely would skew the age younger.
A lot of young Asmongold fans.
Yeah, or even like Soda and stuff when they play.
Yeah. A lot of young bucks.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Like the viewership for OnlyFans, I think is much younger than you'd expect.
Yeah.
I would definitely consider Classic more mainstream than retail. So I could definitely see it attracting a lot more younger players.
Yeah, but at its baseline, it was made popular by old people. So it's like it's one where the outliers are probably huge. I bet there's a lot of young and a lot of old, and I don't know about the amount of people in between. Wait, where's this ChatGPT?
It's in the wrong channel, but the channel.
Oh,
the channel titled "Very Private, Don't Talk About on Stream."
Oh, that's very good.
But we are going to talk about it.
Yeah. Do you know what? I've never put in a single prompt on purpose into AI. Like, obviously, like when you Google stuff, it AI stuff for you every time. But like, I've never done that, man. I don't fuck with robots. Not one. I don't even sim my guy.
Amen.
Yeah, fair enough. I don't use it currently either, but it does seem like every few months it's like increasingly so much better to the point where it's like,
AI?
I don't know. It's certainly useful now, and it would be super useful. And like, it's hard to imagine it's not going to be super useful in like a year or 2 years.
Oh,
I can even tell you. Useful. I can even tell you that from just Google alone. Like just Googling shit, the AI summary like a year ago was so ass, and now it's kind of what I'm looking for every time because I don't want to click through 3 or 4 different things to get a good article. I want a quick answer and someone to summarize it, and turns out that's fucking exactly what it does. So.
It got a lot better at being quick, faster than it got better at being right. And so a lot of smart people initially were like, okay, this is stupid. When I Google something, there is now the top link is just the wrong thing, right? Like, this is dumb. Why would I ever use this? But people treat that like it's not a solvable problem that is actively being solved every day. And like, clearly it is.
Dude, you know what they need to fix, man? Whenever you're playing a new video game and you're just trying to look up some semblance of information on the internet, and you just get like the 10 AI generated slop articles, like Game Rant, and like all the ones that even kind of look like that, just absolutely terrible websites. And you have to type Reddit after your inquiry to get like an answer from a real human that isn't horrible. I wonder if AI can ever figure that out.
I imagine it I don't think it currently is there, but I doubt it's far off. Like, being able to parse that information, because like right now you could ask it to answer various questions about games, but it won't actually get niche ones. I don't believe. Again, I don't actively use it. I haven't checked recently or anything, but my money would be on that's a capability that it'll have soon.
Oh yeah.
The problem is those gaming article shits have always been around, at least from like as far back as I can remember. Like I remember anytime I would Google anything up for some game related shit, it would almost always have the top results be some random game article talking about like, oh, best weapons of Elden Ring, or like,
yeah, that's not the AI I'm talking about. That's like slop AI. I'm talking like the Google AI learning to ignore the slop AI.
Right.
I was just saying like game articles in general.
It was before AI, the experience was still similar, and before it was on Google, it was the like those game guides you'd see at GameStop that like those also were often,
dude, are there
full of pretty low value copy.
Did YouTube kill the like old? So I remember the first time I played through Ocarina of Time as a kid, I did it natty, and then I played through it again, and my friend had like the little, I think you can like buy a full on, I don't know if it was produced by Nintendo or like a third party company, but it was like the most elaborate, eloquent, correct, like crazy easy to follow guide of all time. And I'm like, I wonder if they even make those for games anymore. Maybe I'm just not in the market of trying to find them anymore, but I wonder if YouTube just killed that. Like basically YouTube guides are just so much better that you don't worry about it. Do you guys know what I'm talking about? Do you guys ever have one of those?
I know. I used to. I would get game guides when I was a kid, and like, not to like cheat. We're talking games, about like the physical copies, right? It's just like I liked games a lot, copies. And I liked reading about them and stuff, and things like that. So the quality varied wildly from game to game, is what I remember. Like there were some games where it was clear that they were, the guide was like just full of like copy pasted spreadsheets or whatever, and not. And then there were some where it was like, okay, this is like,
yeah, but if you're a game, really you feel less likely to actually spend part of your budget on creating that thing, because you know that the people who early review your content, their entire livelihood is depending on people clicking on that shit, and they're probably going to do it better.
I suspect that you're right, but I don't know for sure. I haven't, been to a physical game store in a long time.
Dude, physical copies are fucking awesome.
Yeah.
I miss that shit. You're muted, right. Max. You're talking, but you're muted as fuck.
Oh,
I'm muted. That's fucking insane. I love being muted. Okay, so have you guys seen the new game prices for like the Switch 2?
Oh, I heard about it.
Like it's like $100 or something.
Well, it's like $80, but specifically the physical copy is, I think, more expensive, which I guess technically makes sense, even though it feels like shit, because like they're literally producing like a thing. They're basically giving you a little cartridge to take home that just lets you download the game. Like they're basically there just as a relic, But I just think the whole physical thing going away is interesting, and Nintendo charging that much is kind of fascinating. Because I remember hearing a YouTube basically, if you guys ever watched, I love these videos. They're usually by Wired or some other people, and it's like something support, and it's like if you want to learn about like random Greek mythology, like the smartest person ever on that will just answer a bunch of questions from Twitter and answer shit. There was one by a video game guy. It was really fascinating because I don't know. I play a lot of video games, but I don't know a lot about video game publishing. And one of the questions was like, when is the cost per game gonna like go up or go down or whatever? I'm mad. Well, how come games are still like 60? He's like, well, the thing is that games have been $60 for like 20 years, and the cost to make a game that can be sold has gone up exponentially. And we don't want to pass that cost on to the consumers, but we don't really know what we're supposed to do with that because it's just a real thing, right? And then you bump up the cost to $80 and everyone hates it, obviously, because, you know, that's just, it's been 60 forever. But I was wondering if it's a matter of time before that happens. And then also, if you fast forward 10 years, how much does a video game cost?
Well, is it not microtransactions
that's how a lot of people are getting around it. That's why microtransactions exist, basically. That's their way of not passing cost on to the consumer, is they allow certain people to pay for specific things so other people can either play it for free or for a reduced cost.
And
also, there are just way more gamers nowadays than ever before. Like I'm sure I would actually be curious what the numbers are. Like how many players play the game, how many players are gaming nowadays compared to 20 years ago.
Post-COVID even, I think, was a massive jump.
Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting because, okay, so this lines up with another area that I find really interesting, which is like price discrimination in general. So you're talking about something being more expensive for a physical copy and people not liking that. But consider a flip side. Imagine a world where 15 years ago, Steam comes out and they say, okay, because we are doing a digital copy of the game that doesn't need a CD printed or anything like that, we can offer you a discount if you buy it digitally.
Yeah.
Right? Would people like that? Probably yes, right?
Yes,
Even
absolutely.
Like it makes perfect sense, right? Like there's more cost involved in making a physical copy. That should cost more. But if you frame it as or if it comes out as a price increase for the physical copy instead of a price decrease for the digital copy, then I think you go from like 80-20 liking it to 80-20 disliking it, which is really interesting.
Yeah, there's been a bunch. It's like kind of the concept of nerfing versus buffing in WoW.
Yeah.
In a way. You're accomplishing the same thing, but people are mad in one and happy in the other.
Yeah. Super cool. All right. W. I think Frank had some great topics that we will steal for future weeks because
they're evergreen. We could do those. Yeah,
there's some good ones. Good work, Frank. Thanks for writing all those topics. Sorry we didn't use all of them.
Thanks, Dustin, for the Patreon. That was actually a really good Patreon question, I think. That is a very interesting topic. I think about that constantly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was a fun topic.
Yeah. And thanks all of you for listening or watching. And thanks in advance for subscribing to our Patreon, those of you who haven't. Do that now.
And subscribe.
Yeah,
subscribe to
our
YouTube channel.
Subscribe.
All right. Later.